Right, so why don't I take the opportunity to talk about the game a little more? And yeah, you might recognize this footage as, well, being from the introductory rant. Yeah, I'm recycling footage, so shoot me. Okay, well, what I want to talk about is in part sort of well, I don't know exactly how to describe it, which is sort of unfortunate in these circumstances. Yeah. Well, yeah, I can start with this. Yeah. See, the sort of impression I get from reading about how the game sort of developed, was developed. It sort of seems like the developers really put a massive amount of effort into the game, and that did not always pay off, and plans didn't work out, and just sad times all around, basically. There are rumors about one of the authors who was kicked off the team after episode 1. I do not like the idea of perpetuating rumors, so I will not say very much about that. Let's just say that it really was a bit of drama. And moving on from that, there were also speculation on why Yasunori Mitsuda left the team. Well, there are also some... Well, I also felt that there were a few, shall we say, not entirely... what's that word? Yeah, my vocabulary isn't quite up to scratch, but there were some not so flattering speculations as to why he did that, or how that came to be. Maybe he didn't feel like the series was moving in the direction he had hoped, and well, obviously, as I said, there are signs that the leadership was not as good as it should have been. So maybe he was displeased with that, and yeah, it all turned pear-shaped. So, starting from that, if you look at Xenoblade for the Wii, this was also a very ambitious project. Well, at least that is how it seems, from judging from what I read about it. There is a massive amount of content in it, and the sub-quests just all over the map, and yeah. Of course, with that game, they departed from this idea of there having to be a series, and they put the entire story into one game. However, I have watched some videos of people playing that game, and I just never felt as engaged in the characters in Xenoblade as I did in the characters and story and things in Xenosaga. Also, the music in Xenoblade is, well, not quite what well, yeah, it did not cater to my sensibilities. Let's leave it at that. Yeah. So, well, the point I'm trying to make is that uh, Monolith Soft did not make as much effort in Xenoblade as they spent on making Xenosaga and arguably Xenogears, but I don't know much about that myself, so that is purely speculation on my part. However, the trend... screw trends. Who needs them? So, to return to Xenosaga, of course, it is a very ambitious project. I mean, having a story, coherent story, that spans 6 games, that's... yeah, you have to sort of aim big, right? You can't just take some little story, some small contained story that's easily told within one game and make it span several games. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Square. I'm looking at you for Final Fantasy VII, and spin-offs, movies, and Final Fantasy 13. So, yeah, enough. Well, I could make a video where I say stuff about Final Fantasy 13 as well. I mean, I personally like to think that I have a few interesting points about that, but okay, Xenosaga. And ambitious games. Right, of course, famously they wanted to make a 6-part series, and as we saw, they had to sort of cram all sorts of things into episode 3. And yeah, that kind of made it feel like, well, listening to several Mahler symphonies in a row, at least to me. And if you don't know how that is, just, well, go out, borrow some CDs from the nearest library, and listen to several Mahler symphonies in a row. At least it's good music, though. So, well, what I'm getting to, which might not be terribly apparent, is that few others spend that much effort into making a strong narrative. You know, the closest comparison I can make, as well, among the games I know of myself, and have experience with, is of course Mass Effect, which is arguably a somewhat similar setting. Oh, and there's just tons of lore and tons of just stuff all over the place. But it really doesn't... well, I mean, it is a powerful narrative in its own, on its own, I mean, but I just don't feel like they really pushed it to the limit like they did in Xenosaga. Of course, depending on your sensibilities, Xenosaga does have its own issues, its own sort of improbabilities. There was that word. What is that word again? Well, yeah. Okay. That word slipped my mind, but basically, some parts of Xenosaga, some parts of the premise doesn't really make sense, and there are other parts of Mass Effect that doesn't make sense either. But on the whole, I would say that the stuff that doesn't make sense in Mass Effect is less jarring than the stuff that doesn't make sense in Xenosaga, coming from a Western perspective. That is not to sort of invalidate the Xenosaga narrative in any way. That is still a massive undertaking, and as you could see in the in-game database in episode 3, I mean, 450 lengthy entries. I mean, hey, there's a lot of lore and a lot of journal entries and side stuff in Dragon Age as well, and none of that is really anywhere near the amount of text that they put into Xenosaga. Well, and still, Dragon Age is a significant undertaking. Arguably, Dragon Age 2 is a smaller game than Dragon Age 1. I can readily accept that. I will not dispute that point. But they are still sort of bigger than your average Atelier game. Well, okay, that really wasn't playing fair. But say the .hack games then. They are kind of a big undertaking as well, and there are, what, 9 games now? Well, based sort of in the real world, or sort of near real world. They do not really need to have a massive lore behind it. Well, I kind of feel that they that world doesn't feel as solid to me as the Xenosaga or Mass Effect universes. Okay, so where am I going with this? Basically, I feel that they do not spend as much work on building worlds for games as Monolith Soft did when they made Xenosaga. Of course, that is not to say that game worlds are necessarily small and limited, but I mean, all the little stories about the development of Xenosaga just points to the development crew really just pulling out all the stops, working themselves to the bone, putting all their hearts and souls into every little aspect of the game and of the games, and of course, famously, not everything worked out quite as well as you would have hoped. But you know, it's, well, I really, I really hope that trend changes. I mean, we do need like solid game worlds, or the games are just going to, well, basically enter one ear and out the other, as we say in Sweden. If the game worlds do not engage the gamer, I mean, we're just gonna forget about it all. So it's just going to be a sort of Hollywood just push stuff out that sort of makes everybody happy, and it's a well, something you can get behind, something you can really something that seems like it hits the spot right at this point, and then you're sort of just going to forget about it. That I kind of feel that way about first-person shooters at this point. Well, I mean, that's really not my cup of tea. You will never see me post videos of a first-person shooter because, well, they give me motion sickness. Yeah. So, was there anything else to say on that subject? Yes, the first-person shooter. Of course, those who play first-person shooters will probably not agree with me, and I will listen to any point you make if you post in the commentary, promise. But I feel that they are sort of just rehashing the old stuff. I mean, well, of course, new stories and such, but it's basically the same thing over and over, and same kind of narrative. You know, you might also say that about Western RPGs and and the sort of experimentation they do with Japanese role-playing games. It's kind of probably not all good. But yeah, they are trying, I'll give them that. I mean, yeah, where do we go from here? Of course, South Park, kind of an interesting bird in the context. But yeah, I really haven't seen any sort of big RPG experience since Xenosaga. I mean, sorry, Dragon Age. I mean, yeah, that is a sort of big experience on its own, and Mass Effect, sure. But well, something. Well, of course, the main thing about BioWare's later RPGs, Mass Effect, and Dragon Age, is the cast. Basically, I really enjoy the character interactions in those games more than more than the game itself, really. I mean, just yeah, I could go on forever about Jack and what's yeah, who's that elf in Dragon Age 2 again? Is it Mero? Yeah, well, whatever. That elf sorcerer, I just found it so so ridiculously cute and well, entertaining. It's just those really big, experiences that just grabs you by the balls and drags you along for the ride, whether you like it or not. That kind of experience is rare, at least among the games I have played. Rare and far between. So, I mean, what's the industry going to do, really? What haven't they tried, honestly? But regardless, I am looking ahead with careful optimism. I mean, the Myst guys, although their games sort of never really touched me in the same way, I mean, they are still active. I have pitched into the Kickstarter thing for Obduction. I believe that's what they're calling it, their new game. And I am looking forward to that. And there's always Chris Roberts' sort of Star Citizen game, and that sounds kind of promising on paper. Of course, I have not played it yet. It's not near finished, and well, but I am looking forward to see what Chris Roberts will do with the genre. Of course, Chris Roberts is kind of famous for Wing Commander and Star Lancer and just stuff, and the ever so dreadful Wing Commander movie. But the worlds he made, well, Wing Commander at least, yeah. I mean, that was really a compelling universe, so I am kind of hoping that Star Citizen will prove to be more of the same and bigger. Okay, so I ranted a lot here and I had to loop the video. I hope it didn't pain you too much, and I will leave it at that. Xenosaga, a hell of a series. A lot to talk about, and sort of probably a lot to relate to contemporary events. Yeah, okay, so let that be that, and we shall be merry, and hopefully I will return to you with future recordings. I am planning to do some Persona 3 FES after this, of course. Although I probably will not start recording those videos for a while yet after recording this commentary, due to, well, kind of want to play South of Ark, and I also want to finish Lightning Returns. Yeah, I bought that game and I almost regret it. Well, anyway, I will be back in the future, so see you then.